Welcome back, and we continue with our top story. Botswana's High Court has ruled in favor of decriminalizing homosexuality, which is outlawed under the country's 1965 Penal Code. Judge Michael Elburu set aside the provisions of a Victorian era and ordered the laws to be amended. Now, the judge emphasized that the current laws oppressed a minority of the population. Now, to talk more on this, we are joined by Tashwill Esterhuizen from the Southern African Litigation Centre. Very good evening to Tashwill. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, this judgment itself, what were the two sections of the penal code that were challenged?
I just want to correct you from in Botswana, it wasn't homosexuality that's criminalized. What was in fact criminalized was same-sex sexual conduct. And there's a distinction. In Botswana, a few years ago, we had a similar judgment where the court has said homosexuality is not a crime. What is in fact a crime is same-sex sexual conduct. So what the activists tried to do in this case, they challenged a law. It's an old colonial British law where the government criminalized same-sex sexual conduct from the one section, and also public indecency. And the court has interpreted public indecency to be oral penetration. But interestingly about Botswana, the law criminalized sodomy, whether it's between heterosexual or homosexual persons. And so ideally what the activists tried to demonstrate to the court was that the law actually disproportionately impacted on homosexual people.
So, Tashwill, what happens next then in terms of ratifying that law?
Well, as it stands, the court declared the law unconstitutional. So the government must take measures to make sure that the law is removed from the statute books. So the court was very clear that the law is discriminatory. It violates the privacy of LGBT persons in Botswana. And more importantly, that the law has a disproportionately impact on LGBT persons. The Lesbian, Gays and Bisexual of Botswana, Legobibo, which is the organization that SALK supported through their legal arguments, submitted crucial evidence to demonstrate to the court that the law negatively impact on LGBT persons, including their mental health, access to healthcare, and that the fact that the law continued to exist actually prevented people from accessing crucial services such as HIV services and STI services.
One then wonders, Tashwill, who will be there to monitor whether the dictates of this judgment are being followed, because sexual relations are between two people in private.
Well, that's the unfortunate thing of the law. We've always said, how do you even monitor these laws? In fact, as I mentioned to you earlier on, the law criminalized sodomy, as you call it, between homosexual people as well as heterosexual people. But the law only targeted homosexual people. So the fact that the law, it was very difficult to implement the law without invading in the privacy of homosexual men.
So are there any known cases where people had been arrested or even detained through this law?
In recent years, there hasn't been any cases of the under this laws. The last case that we know of where someone was arrested was in the case of Kanani, and in that case, the court actually said that that case actually went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Appeal of Botswana. And in that case, the court said that the time has not arrived to decriminalize same-sex sexual conduct in Botswana. The court said that the society wasn't ready, that the attitudes of society hasn't changed. And the court at that stage, in 2003, the court then decided not to decriminalize same-sex sexual conduct. Importantly about this case, the court has distinguished this case from that case, because the court said that in this case, the Lesbian, Gays and Bisexual of Botswana has submitted evidence to demonstrate that the time has indeed arrived to decriminalize same-sex sexual conduct.
Well, Tashwill, I'm not sure if you're referring to that appeals court. Well, I want to take you back to the 16th of March 2016, where Botswana's appeals court actually delivered a landmark judgment where it ruled that the government was wrong to refuse to register organizations which are representing gay people. So where does the government stand in all of this, in light of this new judgment?
So in that case was a case involving the registration of the Legabibo. And the court refused to register Legabibo because the government refused to register Legabibo on the basis that the sodomy laws existed. And the government instead, because sodomy is criminalized, same-sex sexual conduct is criminalized, they cannot register an organization that promotes the interests of homosexual people. But the court dismissed that. The court said, no, what is criminalized is the conduct and not individuals, and you cannot criminalize people's right to express themselves. So the court ordered the government to register Legabibo as an organization. And that case was important because it set the tone for today's judgment. That case was part of a long-term coherent strategy for the lesbian, gays, and bisexuals of Botswana towards decriminalization of same-sex conduct. Legabibo strategically brought that case in 2014 to see what the court's attitudes are towards LGBT persons, and they sort of test the waters for LGBT people in the country, and what does the court feel? And that court ultimately lead to a series of other cases. There was subsequently a case involving 2 transgender persons where the court also ordered the government to change their markers to reflect their gender identity. So this case, what we see today, is part of a long-term coherent strategy of activists who have decided to use the courts to assert their fundamental rights.
Now, today's judgment, Tashwill, was met with so much excitement, and particularly from the international community. We've seen the United Nations also applauding this judgment, with UNAIDS saying that it will help the fight against AIDS, especially in Botswana. Will this judgment start a domino effect in the other countries which still criminalize homosexuality?
Well, we hope, from the Southern African Litigation Center, who works throughout Southern Africa, we really hope that this judgment will send up a positive message to other courts in the region that they should also protect the fundamental rights of LGBT persons. In fact, the Botswana courts have consistently shown themselves that they are not unwilling to step in cases where governments continue to fail LGBT people and deny them of their fundamental rights. With regards to the HIV, the Legabibo has submitted evidence to demonstrate to the court that by decriminalizing same-sex sexual conduct, it will actually be an important step towards addressing HIV within the country. They submitted evidence to demonstrate to the court that continued criminalization actually hinders the country's fight for HIV, the fight against HIV in the country.
All right, Tashwill, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. That was Tashwill Esterhuizen joining us via Skype, and he was just reacting to Botswana's court decision to declare homosexuality not a crime. This is The Globe on SABC News. Thanks for watching.